Hello and welcome. I'm so excited to connect with you today. For those of you that are watching this replay, we did this class live and we had several technical challenges. So I am providing this cleaned up version, not with no technical issues, for the free webinar that was held last week. And this is called the 5 ways to mind hack your way to happiness and success. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. So, welcome to 5 ways to mind hack your way to happiness. And so, right now, I just want you to check in with yourself. Take a big, deep breath in and out, and think of one word that best describes how you're feeling right now. Now, if you are a note taker, go ahead and get your Word doc out. Make sure you're not distracted with other things, or pen and paper, or your journal, and let's get started. So, for those of you that may not know me or know me well, my name is Allison Nail-Malone, and my company's name is Malone Consultants Group, where we create and transform legendary leaders. We primarily focus on women who are in leadership roles to reclaim and restore their personal power so that they can create maximum influence and impact in the places in the places and the spaces for what is most important to them, for their teams, for their community, for their family, and start to begin to overcome their overwhelm and banish burnout so that they can actually focus on the things that matter most to them. We also partner with organizations to transform their legendary leaders in many different ways. I have 20 plus years in the HR world that includes coaching, training, and development, from those that are just starting out in their career to the C suite. We have tons of certifications and accreditations, but more importantly, me and my team are just passionate about the work that we do in creating a ripple effect of joy and fulfillment and happiness. So I want to start out with this quote. There is no passion to be found playing small, in settling for a life that's less than the one you're capable of living. And this quote is done by Nelson Mandela. And in case you may not be familiar with him, he was a South African anti apartheid revolutionary political leader. He was also a philanthropist who served as president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first Black head of state and the first elected to a fully representative democratic election. And so, what this tells us is, our life is meant to be lived in a way that is impactful, influential, and really from a place of feeling fulfilled and happy. The pandemic has changed the shape of global happiness. Results that are being shared today in the 2021 World Happiness Report, which was done by the Gallup poll, it kind of sounds like a little bit of a misnomer given all the anxiety, grief, and general unhappiness that we see and that we've been experiencing in the last year. But what's interesting is that their survey told a very surprising story, one of almost astonishing resilience, according to the report. So it says, yes, we experienced more sadness, worry, and stress in 2020 than in previous years. I also believe that we acknowledged it more as well. But however, the report does say on average, there was actually no change in our positive feelings or satisfaction with life. While in lockdown, there was a lot of uncertainty, there was a lot of loss that hit our mental health. There is evidence to suggest that many people actually recovered over the course of this past summer and fall and now back into this next spring. So, what was the secret ingredient? Well, it was that our trust in each other seemed to have been really crucial in weathering this crisis, both as individuals and as societies. Here in the United States, we were ranked about midway through that happiness ranking. But this begged the question, so what can we as individuals in leadership, What can we do to mind hack our way to happiness and success? And really, how do we define that for ourselves? So here's what we know is not working. It's not what's not working is working harder and longer hours. It's not about just being grateful. It's not about am I not just passionate enough anymore? Is it just it's not working anymore to just be positive. Just look at the positives. Or to get one more training or certification or accreditation. Well, these things are not working anymore. What else do you believe is just not working anymore? The key thing here, if you don't take away anything else other than this one point, your definition of happiness and success is what's most important. The definition of happiness, fulfillment, and success is a very personal one. Happiness is usually attributed to an individual, whereas success can be attributed to an individual or a group. Happiness has been defined as a goal that, many of us aspire to, but most people also have a very strong desire to be successful in life. And they tend to believe that through success, happiness will just automatically appear. Well, actually, it first starts with you taking full responsibility for your happiness. And then you have to remember that life and therefore feeling happier is a fluid and dynamic process. It's not if I do one, two, three, then I automatically feel happy. There is a fluidity to this. Research in the field of positive psychology often defines a happy person as someone who experiences frequent positive emotions such as joy, interest, pride, and they also experience infrequent, but no, not absent negative emotions such as sadness, anxiety, and anger. Happiness is also have been said to relate to life satisfaction, appreciation of life, and moments of pleasure. But overall, it has to do with the positive experience of emotions. The key to these definitions is that positive emotions do not indicate the absence of negative emotions. A happy person experiences the spectrum of emotions just like anyone else. But the frequency of the spectrum of, but the frequency with which they experience the negative ones, may differ. In fact, using the phrase quote unquote happy person is probably very misleading because it implies that certain people are naturally happy or naturally positive things happen to them more often. And the reality is, nobody is immune to life stressors. The question is whether you see those stressful stressors as moments of opposition or moments of opportunity. So I'm going to invite you to pause here and write down what your definition of happiness is. What is your definition of happiness? What is your definition of fulfillment and success? Excuse me. So now that you've taken some time just to write down a little bit about what your definition of happiness, fulfillment, and success looks like, let's find another way to define your definition of happiness and success. Because oftentimes it can be difficult to really define that for ourselves because we've been very socialized to believe a certain way of what happiness means, of what success means, of what fulfillment means. That socialization comes from, how we were raised, what our specific culture and society said it was, what TV, movies, songs, all of those things out in public say that success, happiness, and fulfillment means. But let's talk a little bit more about how you can discover what your definition of happiness and success and fulfillment means. So take a look at the pictures here. There's several different types of pictures to look at. And so select a picture that seems to metaphorically represent your definition of success. What is it about the image that calls to you? What are the qualities, the energy that it reflects to you? If the image were a book cover, what would the book title be? And what does this image tell you about your answer to your definition of happiness and success? So while you're thinking about those, I'll share with you one of mine. There's actually two in here, but the number one is this picture here of this cute little, it looks like snowballs, little snowball couple. So when I define happiness and fulfillment, I tend to make it a little bit more relational. When I feel deeply connected in reciprocal, respectful, and loving relationships, as well as partnerships, I think about the people that I partner with in my company and that there's a reciprocal partnership and a reciprocal desire for success, that there's lack of competition, that it has more to do with how do we support each other's business to be successful. And then on my personal side, those relationships that I have that are also reciprocal, that we really respect and really support each other in ways that are as unconditionally as a human can. And that also when I kind of see all the like the writing or the words of those on those little couples, I kind of see that as those individuals or partnerships in that like next level or next ring of connection. So how does my network look like? How do the things that I'm a part of, how do we connect and support each other there? So that's how I define parts of my happiness and fulfillment. So I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think it's important for you to define it for yourself? And how can you consistently remind yourself of your definition? One example is I've had a client who really defined their happiness as like a tree. So in a family of trees, there's deep roots, and those roots connect with each other underground so that when storms come, there's some flexibility in how the tree moves, but they're deeply rooted, and the community of trees underneath really support and hold each other during times of storms. And that the tree also produces some kind of fruit or some kind of way to pollinate the earth or provide a home for other species. So the way that this person describes fulfillment is that there's deep connections, that I feel deeply rooted, and that the work that I do helps support other people or provides a space for other people to be who they are. So I'm curious for you, what have you learned about something new about yourself and your definition of happiness and success? So I'm going to show you the 5 ways to mind hack your way to happiness. We're only going to focus on a few of these since we only have a little bit of time. But the first one that we've already done is to really dive deep into what is your definition of happiness and success, because that's the only one that counts. The next one is an acronym of snapping awake. So it's stop and pause, notice with curiosity, allow without judgment and control, penetrate with deep breathing, and prompt to move. So we're actually going to cover that one in just a few moments. But here are a few of the other ones. The next one is to really savor stillness. Oftentimes with individuals who are high potential, highly driven, highly independent professionals, what we tend to do is set a goal for ourselves. We get to that goal, there's hard work behind that goal. We're like, yeah, we did it. Cool. What's next? And then we move on to the next, and it's kind of a repeat, rinse, and repeat, wash, and rinse, right? And we forget to stop and savor the success behind those bigger projects. But even we sometimes forget to just at the end of the day to stop and savor, what did I accomplish today? What was good about today? What can I celebrate today? We don't do that often enough as a society, but particularly people who just drive and drive and drive, we forget to do that quite frequently. The next is to regularly invest in the power of you. Now, this can look like a lot of different ways, but some of the best ways to do this is one is what is it that you're doing to feed your mind, heart, and soul? Now, I have to tell you, I love true crime stuff. I love anything paranormal. But sometimes I need to switch that off to listen to podcasts, as I'm a podcast junkie, but to listen to podcasts of can I turn my mind into something that can think about my business differently? How can I turn into my heart and to my soul to look at the areas of my blind spots? How can I also look at ways to uplift my spirit? And so, podcast is one way you could do that, but also investing in the power of you could be coaching. It could be taking on another class. It could be, how can I stop feeling so isolated? How could I kind of invest in the power of me so I don't feel so isolated? So the power of, investing in the power of you can be in many different ways. You just have to choose one and just be consistent with that one. And then the last one is to cease self doubt with an actionable stop sign. And so, what I mean by that is a client of mine who had frequency to interrupt people in meetings. And it was because this person, had such great ideas. They didn't intend to interrupt other people, but they wanted to get that idea out before they forgot it. And so what it did was create a perception of this person that they didn't listen and they didn't hear, and that could actually be far from the truth. But that perception of that feedback of perception created self-doubt, and it actually created this person to interrupt even more. And so what they did was create an actual stop sign. You can use whatever sign you want to, but this person created an actual stop sign that they put on their planner. So when they would go into their meetings, they had their planner and there was a stop sign there for them to remember to stop and pause and to hear, write down what their thought was, and when it was appropriate to share that information. So, what is the one area that creates self doubt? And then, what's a physical sign that could remind you that self doubt is a lie? And if it's not a lie, if it's really an area where you need to grow in, then how can that sign really support you in investing in the power of you so that you can overcome that piece of it? So we focused on the first one was defining your definition of happiness. And so we're going to spend the next couple of minutes talking about the acronym snapping awake. So while we can't change experiences or objects that trigger us, we can shift how we relate to them, meaning the thoughts, the image, and the uncomfortable bodily sensations that accompany them. Well, how do we do this? It's through learning about and practicing a specific type of mindfulness. Now, mindfulness is just a state of non judgmental paying of attention of your experience in the present moment and is key to kind of detangling ourselves from the habitual ways that we've been responding. Cultivating this kind of mindfulness, we can really learn to lean into our habitual patterns when they show up and ultimately sidestep them, really allowing us for more consistent experiences of happiness and well being. Mindfulness practices offer the possibility eventually of stopping and severing that habitual cycle at the source in our brain. For example, studies suggest that mindfulness can help us stop smoking, manage anxiety, and change problematic eating by cutting the link between conditional cues in our environment and the habitual responses to those cues. We simply need to just leap over these hurdles to happiness with consistent practice. So, the snapping awake exercise really provides a practice to lean into our own happiness and success. Now, this comes from a clinical psychologist by the name of Mitch Ablett, and he's the one that created the snapping awake technique and is one that I teach my clients. So, let's talk about these. The first one is the S. It's to stop and pause. So the way this looks is to stop what you're doing for just a moment when you can tell you're getting triggered by something in your environment or something is starting to rise within you. A great exercise to stop and pause is called focus on your five senses. Five, four, three, two, one. So you start with the five different things that you see. So, example, one of those things is I see the trees outside, I see the couch in my office. And so you name five things that you see. What are the four things that you hear? The buzzing of the air conditioner, the birds outside. So, what are four things that you hear? What are three things that you sense or kind of feel with your skin? So, for example, is like the collar on my neck or the warm breeze on my arms. The next is the two things that you can taste. Maybe it's the lingering coffee on my tongue or the taste of toothpaste, or maybe you have something close by that you can just stop and savor the taste. And then number one is what is it that I smell? So maybe it's the way the air smells. So there's perfume, somebody's lingering perfume, or maybe someone ate a stinky tuna sandwich. Then notice how all of that feels once you take your body through that. Be as specific as you can about these items as so you can really concentrate on the external factors to kind of get out of your own head. Paying attention to things like shape, scent, texture, and color will really bring you back to the present moment before you even realize it. Next is to notice with curiosity. Notice what's happening in your body and in your mind when you start to feel anxiety or kind of a bulldozer to your happiness. Witness and watch the energetic play of the bodily sensations and the continuous flow of thoughts and mental images as if it was just kind of born to life, that it lives, and then visualize it passing on. A great exercise to this to help kind of focus on noticing with curiosity is to ask yourself, what assumptions might I be making right now? Am I trying to make someone right or wrong? Where am I feeling this in my body? So, why might I be feeling it there? And why do I think that this is happening? This is a great way to be very curious. So, just asking these kinds of questions also brings you back to the present moment. The A is to allow this experience or experiences just to be as they are without judgment or attempting to control them. This doesn't mean you're signing up for discomfort or pain, but you are choosing to recognize what's happening in the moment without trying to change it. A great example to help support you in allowing this experience just to be what it is what's called a mind dump or mental dump. I love that word dump. Sometimes we have this natural need to control what's going on and trying to control how we feel because emotions sometimes can be difficult to regulate. And oftentimes, when you're starting to wanting to control what's happening or control your feelings, it's because you're craving a certain sense of certainty because you don't want these bad feelings to take over. But when you can't process or you suppress those emotions, it doesn't actually help you feel more contentment. In fact, it does the opposite of making you feel more prone to stress and anxiety and irrational outbursts. So, the mental or mind dump is to process your feelings or emotions or just the things that are kind of going on in your brain to just write it all down, like put your timer on for 5 minutes and just do a mental dump of what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what do you see, what are you experiencing, and just write it all down. Now, when I do mental dumps, I have to type it out because I can't write as fast as my brain is going. But I find if I set myself for a timer for 5 minutes and I just do a mental dump, I don't care about grammar or spelling, I just put it all out there. What it does is you are dumping the things that's kind of doing the swirl in your brain and putting it down, basically getting out the negative out of your system. The first P in snapping awake is to penetrate uncomfortable sensations in the body with a full, deep belly breath and continue to breathe in this way until you start to notice your experience shifting and your negative patterns of thought and feeling beginning to dissolve and become more flexible. So, a great exercise is called the box breath. This was actually started in the Marines to teach the Marines when they had to go underwater and they started to feel panic, is to use this box breath. And now it's used in all different kinds of avenues for stress management. And so, what you do instead of taking a deep breath in your chest is you take a deep breath in your belly and just kind of imagine all that oxygen filling up all the spaces and you count to 4. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you hold that breath at the top for 4, 2, 3, 4. And then let go of the breath. 2, 3, 4. And then hold it at the bottom. 2, 3, 4. And then you take another deep breath in, counting to 4 and holding it at the top for 4, letting go for 4, holding it at the bottom for 4. And you do this for 4 times. And you'll start to notice that your body starts to calm. You wouldn't think to remind yourself to breathe is important, but it is, particularly if we are feeling stress and anxiety and it's blocking our way to happiness. Um, Deep breathing helps us to become, again, back present to our body, feeding our brain with oxygen because we have a natural tendency to hold and constrict, which then constricts and creates barriers for our brain to think from a logical yet still emotional space. All right, let's talk about the last P. Oops. And that is to prompt, to move or act with intention in the direction that feels most important with 1% intention and direction. So, what that means is to pause to remember first to be kind to yourself and to appreciate the efforts and working through your habitual patterns. So, what this could look like is how asking yourself, what is the one thing that I can do in this moment to move forward, to calm down, or whatever that thing is that you're wanting to do to bring you back to happiness and fulfillment. What's the one thing that I can do? And how can I make that happen? A great example is I had a client who had been in a meeting and it had been a pretty intense meeting. And when they left that meeting, there was a lot of anxiety and self doubt that this person felt. And so, what they asked themselves is, okay, what's the one thing that I can do right now to bring me back to center and to feel grounded? And for themselves they said, I'm going to go for a walk. I know being outdoors, I know being close to a tree and nature, it's what grounds me. I can do that for 5 minutes. So they walked outside and took deep breaths in, did the 4 box breath, and began just to notice what was around them to bring them back to center. So, when bringing mindfulness to our habits, we start to build and strengthen the skill of deeply listening to what those patterns are telling us about how we play defense against pain every day, and how we might learn to actually be with our body and our mind with spacious presence and clear awareness. That way, we can look at our lives with less distortion and leap forward with more purpose and direction. So, I'm curious for you. Which of these most resonate with you? Albert Einstein once said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use, that we created them. So, how do we stop and pause and begin to process the shifting of our thinking, being, and doing to benefit our definition of happiness? So, I have an exercise for us that will really help us with that. What the intention of this exercise is to help us think outside of the way we've always done it. So, for example, if my current role or my current job is creating a lot of stress for me, it's making me physically ill, and I keep thinking that it's going to change, but nothing does. And I keep going to work and I keep taking on the abuse or taking on the same things, and at the end of the day, I'm still feeling the same way, going back tomorrow expecting it to be different, and I haven't shifted my mindset or thinking, it's just going to show the same. It's going to be the same. So this exercise, what this will do is really begin to help you think outside of what is always shows up for you. So with this recording, there will also be a PDF that you can use to do this exercise. So it's just a simple brainstorming exercise. So, and this is also kind of helping us integrate how to use the snapping awake technique as well. So think about, I'm going to show you some examples, and then I'm going to encourage you to pause this recording and do the brainstorming for yourself. So when I think about the different aspects of snapping awake, and how can I use that to support some of the areas where I might feel if I could just increase 1% of the happiness quotient in this area, what would I do? So here's a great example. An area that I might want to work on is anytime a crisis comes my way, maybe I naturally feel like it's an insurmountable problem. Like there's no choice. I have no choice. So one way I could do that is, okay, I probably need to stop and pause for just a moment. And so the way that my ideas to increase happiness in this space is to stop and pause and journal about how I can change how I interpret and respond to those crises. Another example is perhaps I've been feeling feelings of isolation. So I'm going to notice with curiosity, why am I feeling this way? What's causing it? So what's one thing that I can do to overcome this feeling of isolation? And so one thing I can do to increase my happiness quotient is to research supportgroups.com for a list of support groups. Perhaps I'm feeling that perhaps I'm noticing that I'm feeling more in a constant state of increased stress. So what's the 1% that prompt to action that I can do? So perhaps it's setting an alarm to regularly call, text, or email a trusted partner, trusted family or friends. So for you, what is one area that you would like to work on? And go back to the snapping awake, and which of those could really help support you move forward just with one action to increase your happiness quotient. And what's that just one action that you could do to move forward? So hopefully you took some time to pause and do this. If you didn't, I would encourage you to do that, or as soon as this recording is over, to come back to this place, or take that PDF and do that exercise. Because then what I want you to do is, how does your idea or your ideas from this worksheet really align with your core values or your why? So for example, a constant state of increased stress. So if I set myself an alarm to regularly call, text, or email with my family and friends, how does that connect with with one of my core values, or with my core values or my why? So for me, when I start to feel like I'm in an increased state of stress and I set my alarm to call someone, it really provides me an opportunity to deeply connect with my loved ones, which is why I decided to create my own business. This is so that I could create better, stronger, more open spaces to spend time with people that I love. And so when I start to notice that I'm feeling a lot more anxiety and stress, and that reminder comes up, oh yeah, that's right. I'm doing this so that I can create space to spend time with those that I love. So I would love to hear from you, but would just love for you to just take a few moments to consider, how did this activity or this particular event help you feel more connected and fulfilled? And then I'm wondering, how would you answer, what support do you need to create the space to be free in your happiness and success? And then what is one key action item that you can do this week? So next month is for our next free webinar is going to happen on Tuesday, August the 10th at 12 p.m. Central. Our topic is building influence as a leader. And what we're going to cover in next week's or next month's webinar is what is personal influence and why is it valuable? We're going to talk about the different types of influential power that exists in a business context and how you can actually relate to that influence, and then how you can develop the levels of influence that you have over others. And the one last thing that I want to share with you is how I can help you continue to increase your happiness quotient. There's a program called Overcome the Overwhelm. It is a 4-month women's leadership collaboration. And I just want you to picture yourself, 4 months from now. If you were to start this and 4 months from now, you're feeling more centered, calm, and confident, you're feeling a lot more energy and joy, and yet you're feeling a lot more relaxed and restored in your leadership. You're more productive, you're more organized, and you're actually developing stronger, healthier, deeper connected relationships, and that you're feeling more in control and balanced in your life. So this program, Overcome the Overwhelm, is for you if you wish to achieve more but can't quite get over the hump. You struggle to say no to things even when you want to say no, that you are feeling stressed, disorganized, or always in a rush. This program is for you if you wish there was just extra hours of the day to get everything done. And if you're finding that you have no time for yourself. So when you become a part of this leadership collaborative, you will gain because what you will gain is that you will create your own framework to regain your personal power and control, to boost your resilience and manage stress with ease so that you can feel more relaxed, productive, and organized. You can claim your boundaries to create more freedom and honor you and your time completely guilt-free. And then you'll also be able to create a framework to communicate assertively with confidence those boundaries and overcome the feeling of overwhelm so you can thrive for more joy and experience more fulfillment. And if this is something that is of interest to you, I do have a fast acting bonus that if you sign up for this program before July 30th, the investment for this is $2,997. But if you act before and reserve your spot before July 30th or by July 30th, you'll actually get a 15% discount from the total investment amount. And you'll also receive a free leadership book called Self Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. So if this is something that you are interested in exploring, send me a quick message and I'll give you more information. I cannot wait to connect with you soon. Have an amazing day and let me know, how did you enjoy this webinar and what did you get out of it?